Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Howdy.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm doing wonderfully. How about yourself? Here, hold on. Let me laboriously attempt to get your camera visible to everyone else. How's your day going?
Good. Been busy.
I don't
I'm
doubt it.
being smeared by one particular opponent that I'm running against. So just
Uh,
endlessly.
wait, fill me. What's the deets? Fill me in on the drama. Who's smearing you?
Yeah. Oh, are we live right now? Or
I should probably clarify. My apologies.
yeah,
Yes, we
just
are
making
live
sure.
right
Yeah,
now.
no worries.
We are
Okay.
working to the entertainment of an audience.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got nine opponents at least, like nine officially filed opponents.
Hmm.
Four Democrats, five Republicans. And there is one opponent who is theoretically progressive, who didn't support Bernie Sanders in the election. Never even mentioned his name. Never supported Warren. Basically sat out the presidential election, right?
Gotcha.
And she is the only candidate I've ever her supporters and I've had issues with them just flat out lying about me. Not that they're criticizing me. I can take criticism, but they're flat out just making stuff up.
That you're the Zodiac
Uh,
killer. That's a common one I know in the political arena.
um, well, yeah, I mean it's stuff like saying that I don't use a union printer and that I'm not actually pro-union. Now it's patently false. We use a union printer, and so I don't know where they're getting it. And then other stuff. Uh, they're also calling it bullying that I've debated people because some of them are younger than me. Um, so I don't know what to do with that. So um, I've debated I don't know like a dozen people on Instagram Live and stuff. And
That sounds like some
um,
snowflake shit to me personally. Debate is the hallmark of political
yeah,
discourse, is it not?
yeah. And one of the people they said that I bullied. They said that I bullied him, and I reached out to him because I thought we were friends and I thought we had a pretty amicable debate.
Hmm.
Just making sure I wasn't disrespectful and that I wasn't talking down to him. And he said no, it was fine. It was a really good productive conversation, and we ended up agreeing on a lot of stuff because he's a liberal. I mean, I'm a socialist. He's a liberal, so we had some stuff where
Right,
we
not
agreed
not
on.
debating a neo-Nazi. We can agree on some basic, principles.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
wait.
exactly.
Let's avoid getting too far ahead of ourselves. I, of course, know who you are, but would you like to introduce yourself broadly to anyone who hasn't had the fortune?
Yeah, so I'm Joshua Collins. I'm a 26-year-old socialist truck driver running for Congress in Washington's 10th district. And if you are in Washington, it's the Olympia Tacoma area, basically. We started this campaign over a year and a half ago. I used social media to fund my campaign entirely, and we've raised about 220 grand from small donations, average about $15.50. Our most common donation is $4.20. So
Really? I,
yeah,
I'm really happy to hear that. I am also
thanks.
a 26-year-old socialist. I have driven a truck once. It didn't go well. So you're
Yeah.
beating me out empirically on that at the very least. I don't know if you recall or if you've put two and two together. I saw you actually at the Tacoma Dome Bernie Sanders rally. I awkwardly asked to take a selfie with you and made a very silly face because I directed both of us towards the sun.
Yeah, I had no idea who you were then. And when I posted I posted that photo on Instagram, I think, and then everyone was like, "Oh my God, you met Vosh," and I was like, "Oh, this is actually some sort of public figure." And then I didn't really look into you that much, but then I started seeing your videos on TikTok of all places.
Really? That's the one
Yeah,
social media platform I have no presence on, at least no
right.
deliberate presence on. Are the kids are running off wild with my clips then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then
Okay.
they'll usually link to your YouTube and tell people to go follow you and stuff.
Yeah, I'll take
So
it. God,
yeah,
I've seen your TikToks. I would see. Okay. I'm your age. I've never really
yeah,
identified, I
right,
guess, that much with the Zoomer affectation. I don't know what I would do with TikTok. I feel like I'm not hot enough. Like you have to dance to a pop song, and then you point at words that appear. Like you do the dun dun, and then you point at Medicare for all is a human right. You know what I mean? I've never felt like I could really
right.
pull it off that well. I've seen your TikToks. You seem to have mastered the medium, far
Yeah.
past what I could ever imagine doing.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of awkward, especially at first. Like my oldest TikToks are my worst ones, and even still, I post some that are cringe, and then just delete him when no one likes him. So
Oh,
yeah,
me too. Me too.
right. But
Uh,
yeah, like then I have some that just randomly go fucking wild and they took almost no effort. Like one of my most viral ones was right when we started like ramp up the conflict with Iran.
mhm.
I posted one that was like basically saying that this was the same as the like ramp up for the Iraq war. And it got like 1 million views and like it got ripped and put on like every social media platform, and just like from my TikTok alone, it was like 1 million, but like overall, that probably got like 5 to 10 million views just because it was used so much.
Jesus. You can, I mean, you can never really tell with those sorts of things, right? The whims of
Yeah,
social media, the algorithm is um unbeknownst to us entirely. I'm glad it popped off. And for what it's worth, I mean, it's
yeah,
working. I mean, I heard about you. You are like the poster child of the Chapo Trap House subreddit. So
right.
yeah, I heard about you like quite a long time. I heard about you only slightly after I even got my YouTube channel up on the ground, frankly. So
Yeah.
you've been there that whole time. One thing I'm concerned about, though, is to what extent do you believe that kind of online support translates into electoral support?
Mm. Well, a good example. I mean, I have to be clear. Like, social media is not voter outreach. It is a tool to recruit volunteers, to earn media coverage, and to raise money. Frankly, now we, have raised $220,000 through social media. That is like unheard of, unless you're Bernie Sanders, basically. So we did have like a major volunteer event that you actually showed up to, that Bernie Sanders rally. We collected signatures at that rally. We had 100 volunteers show up for that and collected 1,000 signatures over the course of a couple hours.
Yeah, it was.
And
It
that's
looked.
what that did for
It
us,
was. I mean,
basically.
it was popping. Yeah, I tried to contribute too. I went. I bought the most expensive poster in my life from your booth, of course, because you choose what you pay for it. I'm really glad
Right.
that it's been working out. It seems like the traditional methods of running a campaign, the traditional methods of fundraising, are inherently
Mm.
exclusionary to anti establishment candidates. And for that reason, the
Yeah.
knowledge that we can work within kind of like an alternative dynamic is heartening. You know who?
Mm.
I always fuck this name up. God help me. Chat, make fun of me if you want. Cenk Uygur? Yank. Tank.
Cenk Uygur.
Cenk.
Yeah.
Okay. Cenk.
Yeah.
Jank, right? With it like a J, but it's a C.
Like a J.
Okay,
Cenk.
Jank
Yeah.
Uygur.
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 Okay, Jank
Yeah.
Uygur. Okay, all right. I'm gonna try to remember
Yeah.
that.
There you
I'm
go.
not going to, but I'm gonna try. He is. Of course, he works. He's the Young Turks guy, and he's enormously successful and popular, and probably fairly wealthy. I
Mm.
imagine he'd have to be for all the media he controls. And he got
Mm.
slammed in the California primaries. Like he got
Yeah.
bodied. It wasn't even close because it seems like that, and you said it yourself, it's not voter outreach. You can be as popular as you want online. How many of those people who donate to you online actually live in your district, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so we already had an effective canvassing operation. We had been knocking doors, kind of working out all the kinks, and we had knocked thousands and thousands of doors already, right? Um, Before the coronavirus situation,
Right,
we
right.
actually hadn't even kicked off our canvassing operation. We were just doing like pretty like small events. A lot of it was like literally just me and my wife knocking doors, or like a couple volunteers going out and doing stuff, and then like reporting bugs with the app we were using and stuff like that. Um, our kickoffs were scheduled for like mid March, I think. I think it was March 21st or something, or something like that. And we ended up having to cancel just all of it. So
Right.
that kind of sucks. We were expecting like 100 people at least to turn out to both of our kickoffs. We had one for Thurston County and one for Pierce County, because it's that drive. People don't like to make that,
Hmm.
drive up I-5. But so that sucks. We've been hit pretty hard by that. But we are still doing voter outreach. We're phone banking. We have more volunteers than every single other candidate combined. We have a bigger web presence than every other candidate combined, which, does help in this particular scenario more than usual, because that's where that's like where you're campaigning. Essentially, you're campaigning online at this point. So
Yeah.
it's a very odd position where we found ourselves in, where although we don't get to utilize our massive on the ground volunteer base, we do still have way more volunteers than everybody else, and frankly, like a popular message to spread around and convince voters. So.
Yeah, I actually tried to look that up before speaking to you. Of course, I know you're popular online. I've known about that for ages. But I was interested in seeing how you were doing relative to the other candidates in Washington 10. I looked at Ballotpedia and
Yeah.
Open Secrets, and I wasn't able to actually find any information about your level of raised finances relative to other candidates. I could see your info, but not the other
Yeah.
people's, which either means they're so insignificant as to not even be recorded, or just that they haven't made themselves open to those processes. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah.
How do you think you're doing, like stacked up wise? Nobody does polling for individual Congress seats, after all. Certainly not for the primaries.
Yeah. So we've got an idea of basically how much every other candidate raised. So to date, we've raised about $220,000. Now we did that in small donations, and
That's
we've
really
recently
fucking good.
saw, yeah, it's average donation of like $15. I don't remember the number of donations, but it's I think it's 14,000 or something like that. But we did that all online, and we've actually seen an increase in donations lately. We're raising well over $1,000 every single day. Our last quarter, we raised essentially an average of like $800 a day. So we are above that, and we actually haven't had any fundraising efforts. It's just been like a couple tweets here and there. So we are planning to actually start focusing on fundraising. We've never paid for Facebook ads to raise money, at least. We've kind of tested out ads for like events and stuff. Hasn't really been effective. But we raise all our money with organic reach. That's actually one of the most impressive things about what we've done. Even other campaigns, like progressive campaigns, they have to drop a lot of money on Facebook ads. Like I really like Shahid Buttar.
Mhm.
They have had a really successful Facebook ad fundraising system, but there is a lot of upfront cost for them to raise that money. So when they do raise money, they're raising a little bit less than they actually are, because they're spending money to raise money.
Right.
We don't spend any money on ads. I think we spent like $10 to push an event, not actually to raise money. And that's wild. Like I don't know. Like it's hard to explain, because most candidates have to spend a lot of money, raise money. They do expensive fundraising events. As far as how much my opponents have raised, one of my opponents has raised $100,000. He is the ex-staffer of Benny Heck. His name's Phil Gardner. I don't know exactly how much. Just his self-reporting said he raised $100,000 in the first quarter. Now, to give you an example of like how they raise their money, first of all, what they do, their primary source is calling wealthy donors who are on like FEC lists of donors, right? And anyone can do this. Like you can right now go into the FEC filings and find wealthy donors and start contacting them and start raising money. And any candidate can do that. It's a lot of work, and typically it only works if you have a message that appeals to those wealthy donors.
Right.
Now, for their other things, they host events. Now, he posted photos of an event that he had, like a fancy fundraiser. It was a room full of really old people, very clearly rich white people. And my wife looked up the venue to see how much they actually spent on that alone. And it was like $10,000 just to rent the venue for a day, which means they spent $10,000 just for
Hey, gotta spend
the
money to
venue.
make money. You know how it is.
Yeah, exactly. So when an establishment candidate raises $100,000, it's not really $100,000. They spend at least half of their money on raising money. So the same is true for my other opponents. Now they've all raised, at least the Democrats have raised a lot more money. Marilyn Strickland is the CEO of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. You might be familiar with her. She was a big figure in Seattle politics. She also used to be the mayor of Tacoma. And she was a big fighter, against all the like anti-Amazon candidates.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with her
She
heroic last stand. Her, the Battle of Thermopylae against Amazon, where she managed to prevail.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's who she is, and she has reported that she's raised over $250,000. And let's see, Beth Dolio has said that she's raised, I think, 240 grand. And Kristine Reeves, we don't know yet. I expect her to have raised a lot of money. We have no reporting, but she was one of the biggest fundraisers in the Washington State House. She's also an executive for the Washington Military Alliance, which is like a lobbying thing.
Hmm.
So she's got that, that military industrial complex money coming to her, I'm sure. So
So
we're
would
just waiting on
you,
her. And
just
what's that?
out of
Go ahead.
curiosity, would you say then this is a pretty hung race? Like there are several candidates who have decent shots. It's not like there's
Mhm.
one overwhelmingly favored candidate and everyone else is looking for a book deal. This is very much an active fight.
Yeah. There are several different establishments in Washington State. It's very fractured, and uh, I guess the thing I would say about the other Democrats in the race is they're all targeting the same demographics. Typically Democrat voters that are over 40. That's like the demographic all four of them are targeting. So
Yeah.
we
Cringe
have been
posting
specifically
boomers.
targeting. Yeah. So, and we're targeting, the youth and, the working class, the blue collar workers, service workers, people who typically don't vote. That's been our plan and our strategy the whole time. So, whether or not one of them can consolidate support among those demographics, I guess that determines whether or not, they are a serious threat to us.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen them take any, our fundraising still does great. Like they had no impact on our fundraising when, like even the like progressive lib
Hmm.
announced. And, we've just, I don't know, we have a strong shot. The Republicans, there's five of them, and it's a pretty blue district. So I imagine one of them is going to be the candidate, and the rest are probably going to drop out eventually.
From what I've seen, the
Um,
Republicans don't seem to have a chance here. So, yeah,
yeah, in the general, at least. Yeah,
yeah, in the general.
yeah.
So what's interesting to me is, so obviously you've got a long road ahead of you, and I cannot imagine the stress, especially with COVID-19 impeding your ability to engage in more traditional, electoral vote gathering processes. But as I'm sure you're aware, just 2 days ago, leaked documents from the Labour Party of the United Kingdom revealed that back in 2017, many of the higher ups of the Labour Party were making a deliberate effort to sabotage Jeremy Corbyn's efforts to become prime minister. And I think
Mhm.
what this did was reinforce a lot of lefties' conception that winning at a national stage is going to always be nearly impossible because we are contending with every high level establishment interest that wants to maintain, its capital production. That there, as Sean put it on Twitter, in order for a conservative to win the election, they have to win the general. In order for a leftist to win, they have to beat the general, beat the media, and then beat their own party, and then win.
Right.
You represent the alternative to that. You're operating locally. I've had a lot of people talking lately about a need to learn from Bernie Sanders and engage electorally on a more local level, not just give up and hope for a Hail Mary in the presidential, but to actually get out there and start getting leftist congresspeople, leftist senators out there, maybe even a leftist governor one day, God willing. What inspired you to get started on that process?
So I'm a truck driver. I've been a trucker for 5 years, and frankly, it was climate change. I was driving around the country and like literally seeing the effects of climate change, and probably the most like the thing that I guess got to me the most was driving through a mountain pass one week, and then driving through it like a week later, and it's just like the forest is just a field of like tree skeletons, because forest fires just tore through like so much of like the forest during the last few years,
I was
and
in
I think
Los
that was the thing
Angeles.
that
I was in Los Angeles
yeah
during the wildfires. It was fucking insane. The 405 felt like it was like an Evil Knievel, like Daredevil stunt act with fire on both sides. The entire rolling
yeah
hills, like next to the observatory, were just like burning. The smoke choked the sky. It's we sure didn't get them like that back when I was younger.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that stuff like really got to me. Like I decided to run for something, and my entire like outlook on it was, if I don't do this, like no one else is going to do what I'm going to do, because I'm going to go and just be unapologetic. I'm going to be radical, and I'm going to be actually antagonistic to the capitalist class. And I'm going to be the person that doesn't, get into Congress and rub elbows with everyone else. I'm going to go and I'm going to shout at everybody and like, like call them out for like being frauds. And I'm going to like rip the mask off. That's my plan. Right. And almost no one is going to do this. Like, it's just, um, like I love AOC, but even she like does act very friendly with a lot of the people in
Yeah,
Congress, and
let's
I'm
put a pin in that. I'd love
uh,
to come back to that later, but for now, continue.
sure. Oh, and yeah, so I ran for office because I felt that I could, and I felt that I could do things a different way, and it worked. So yeah.
Yeah, has it been as difficult or has it been more difficult as you expected?
Actually, no. It's like some of the stuff that was difficult surprised me. Like public speaking is a lot harder than I thought, and I've gotten pretty good at it. But it was definitely the hardest thing. I had like over a dozen panic attacks, like like in front of crowds while I'm speaking. And if you just walk off while you're speaking, then that's kind of the end of everything. So
Yeah.
I've had to like give speeches through panic attacks, which kind of sucked. But ultimately, like it's been pretty easy. I mean, the number one thing that I've learned though is to just not give a fuck what the establishment says, because they basically critique everything I do, and they tell me that I'm doing everything wrong. But by all indicators, we've been doing everything right. And they would tell me, don't use social media so much, don't curse on anything, don't use TikTok for sure. Don't hire people who have never worked on campaigns. Don't let your staff unionize. Just really basic stuff that like, they also wanted me to, some of the part of the Democratic Party establishment wanted me to enforce their policy of not allowing campaign staffers to like report or publicly out abusers. Like this was explicitly demanded of me by like a liberal organization,
Oh,
and this is
naturally,
like the environment. Yeah,
bend the knee, don't shake the boat
yeah,
up too much. Um, yeah,
yeah.
it's incredible to me. There were people back in 2016 who said that Trump's victory sort of foretold the end of the Republican Party because this was like an
Mm-hmm.
unsustainable path of populist nonsense. But I think the opposite is actually true. I think that the Democratic Party is the one that's ailing right now because it's incapable of recognizing that we live in a different political era from like the late 90s or from the early 2000s, or even during the Obama years. The fact that Trump is capable of winning, and with a record high approval rating within the Republican Party at that, with all of his mannerisms, is, I think, a strong indication that most people agree, or at least Republicans seem to agree, that times are dire enough that we don't need to hide behind, civility and nice suits, that we can be a little bit more authentic, a little more open, that we're looking for something a little bit more sincere. But the Democratic Party, as evidenced by the primary, doesn't really seem to have caught on to that. They just want to like the way babies want to get back to the blanket. They just want to go back to the Obama years where they don't have to think about anything. Of course, I don't think lefties are going to be susceptible to that tendency, but it's very frustrating, I think, watching the DNC do this to itself and convince the voters to do it to themselves. And I imagine it's
Mm-hmm.
more frustrating for you because you're running for Congress and I'm a YouTuber.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of saw this coming. Like, I worked my ass off for Bernie Sanders, But when he won those first couple states, and like the media just blacked that out, and then like everyone dropped out to support Biden, I was like, nah, they're gonna push Biden on everyone. And I kept fighting for Bernie. I canvassed for him until the very last day. But it's kind of what I expected.
Yeah, it was
I was
like
not
the
surprised.
moderate Voltron, dude. I remember I was in the shower actually when I read it. I was showering and I have because I'm fucking ADHD. I have my phone in the shower in like a Ziploc bag, and I'm scrolling through Twitter feed and I see it the Klobuchar Buttigieg alliance. They've detached and made themselves into arms and joined in to become part of the Biden bot. And I was, it was like Rand's like, wow, this fucking sucks.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, well, you know. Um, I want to come back to something that you said earlier, with regards to AOC, because I think this is. Oh,
Hmm.
hey, shoe on head. This is a dichotomy that I'm very interested in, which I guess I could
Hmm.
frame as like you versus AOC. Hopefully, it doesn't have to be you two
Hmm.
versus each other, but in terms of your mentality. There are
Yeah.
many leftists who want to do what you do. Highly authentic, very direct. Fuck the establishment, fuck the system. Do what you want, represent the will of the people, show them that we're not afraid of their, establishment cowmongering. And then I feel like AOC is trying to play this longer game where they build this, like,
Hmm.
questionably anti-establishment appeal amongst populist-leaning Democrats, but never so much so
Yeah.
that she gets outright denunciation, and then like maybe one day she like throws the cloak off and she's like, all right, motherfuckers, the time has arrived. Get down on your knees,
Mm.
you know? But I think a lot of people are concerned the latter will never happen, that she'll just keep being like a progressive Democrat forever, you know?
So I guess like talking about AOC, I actually wouldn't have the giant Twitter following I have if it weren't for AOC. When I first got started out, I had like 34 followers, and she retweeted me a few times to get me to like I think 1,200 or 1,700 followers, and just like tweeting me out a couple times, and that helped massively for me to get started. Now my criticisms of AOC aren't of her like values at all. I actually think she is like pretty principled, and I don't totally disagree with what she's doing. Like I understand like all of the rationale behind what she's doing, and I think she's like if like actually to the left of Bernie Sanders, and so like I have to be clear about that. I'm probably more like political or like policy wise aligned with her than I am with Bernie. Um, I just personally am going to go about it an entirely different way, and I do see the benefits of what she's done. I mean, she has essentially built massive popular support behind herself, and I think she has a lot more power and influence with people that, quite frankly, I'll probably never appeal to, even if I tried.
Mhm.
I think that's like a really good benefit. Uh, my plan is to go the exact opposite and just be the fucking bull in a china shop, and just full on just I don't know. I want to polarize the electorate, and because I think that's something that will benefit like the left and the working class.
Do you think I don't disagree with that. I think we need a plurality of approaches to meaningfully. I mean, God knows everyone else is doing this. What the DNC has been
Yeah.
selling people for ages, right? Like between Obama or like a more moderate candidate, it's selling different flavors. And they, what is it? Manufacturing consent, allow people discourse within a given range, and they'll feel more strongly about their participation, even if they can't see outside the walls. Your
Yeah.
existence as a more mask off, out and about socialist could conceivably enhance the ability of people like AOC to do what they do, because it makes them look comparatively
Yeah.
like moderates who are acquiescing to a strong populist leftist base. And likewise, she benefits you because she is able to cultivate a kind of populist progressivism that will lead many down the road to outright socialism, which will then eventually, out of frustration, lead them to people like you.
Yeah.
I am a
That's kind
little
of how
bit
I see it.
hopeful.
I don't. Yeah, exactly, and that's why I don't hold it against AOC like the decisions she makes, like her like tactics that she makes. Like I don't know, I don't totally disagree with how she goes about things. It like it works for her. Like what she's doing is clearly working. I mean, I would say she's the most popular figure in the Democratic Party. I mean, she has certainly
Yeah.
the most influence,
Next to Obama,
and
I guess.
that's amazing. Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he's not in
I
office yet.
think I would like to see some sort of move made, whether that's running for Speaker of the House or something else. I don't know. I would love to see Ilhan Omar as the Speaker of the House or Rashida. Um, whether or not any of them will actually make that move, I have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, I saw recently something from Ilhan Omar's daughter. I respect Ilhan Omar quite a bit. I
Yeah,
aligned with her
me
pretty
too.
heavily, I think, at a lot of policy issues. I recently saw Ilhan Omar tweeting like out of disgust. I think it was with regards to the Obama endorsement of Biden, or it could have been something prior, but it was we lefties, we should no longer participate in electoral politics. This is it. Like, we're done with this. And I think that's a really, not to throw shade or anything, I'm sure she's a wonderful person, but I think that's a really harmful sentiment. You know, the old saying, like, if voting did anything, they would make it illegal. Well, they kind of are trying to. The Republicans have been systemically disenfranchising people for decades. There's obviously something they're trying to prevent. I don't think it's impossible to effect positive change within the electoral system. Maybe not revolutionary change, but I do think something good can come from it. And with that in mind, it frustrates me, I think, that a lot of the disappointment stemming from Bernie's loss here is going to lead people to think like, oh, fuck it, I'm not even going to bother participating. I'm not even going to vote. You know, they show up, they don't want to vote because they don't want to vote for Biden, but you're also on the ballot. And everything down ticket is on the ballot too. I think it's a really destructive sentiment. It bothers me a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, in my primary, there is no presidential candidate on it. Our presidential primaries and congressional primaries are separate. But as far as like the role of electoral politics in a socialist movement, this is something that I feel like a lot of people don't have a nuanced opinion on, or just aren't really like they don't see it yet. Um, the role of electoral politics, for me,
Hmm.
is not for me to go into Congress and be another vote and rub elbows and try and make nice with everyone and try and convince people like Nancy Pelosi to support my policies. No, I'm going to I'm going to polarize everything. I'm going to be loud. I'm going to make the argument, and I'm going to make it publicly, and I'm going to make people choose a fucking side. And I'm going to make it clear that these are our enemies. I think Nancy Pelosi is one of the biggest blockers of progress in this country right now. And if I were in
You're not
Congress,
getting
I would
her
be calling it
endorsement.
out.
Uh oh.
Yeah, and I think that's I guess that's the important role that I have. AOC has chosen a different path, of course. If I'm in Congress, I will be openly antagonistic to liberal Democrats, and I will actually, I'll be picking a lot of fights. Now,
You will
the
physically fight
purpose,
them in the halls of the
yeah,
Congressional building. No, base.
but
No, I
the
agree.
purpose of
Good.
all this is to build a base, though. Like Bernie, like I think it's undeniable. Bernie Sanders' election has changed the left, like power dynamic so radically just by running as a presidential candidate. And like you can go to basically any left organization and you will have people who are only there because they saw Bernie Sanders and that's how they got brought in.
Mhm.
That's actually my intent as well. I'm using electoral politics as a base building tool. I think it's very important that we build our base, that we don't just count on the existing Democratic voters who are already likely voters to try and change the world. We need to bring young people in. We need to show them how like how ineffective electoralism actually is, and show them like what the actual blockers are. And we need to radicalize an entire generation. That's the important thing. Like we need them to understand like what actually needs to be done. And what I think needs to be done is we need a mass movement of the working class in the form of something like a general strike. And I think we are getting really close to that,
We're
to
boiling
being
up to
there.
one at the moment,
Um,
aren't we?
exactly, yeah. And
Yeah.
if you didn't know, by the way, Rent Strike 2020, have you heard of that at all?
Yes, I have. But please, for those who haven't.
Okay, yeah. So I started some petitions demanding the suspension of rent, mortgage, and utility payments. I did this initially in Washington State, and then when it went viral, I did it all over the country. And over the period of about 3 or 4 days, we got around like 2 million signatures. Now, we've used that to organize the Rent Strike 2020 organization. Now, I don't have any leadership role in that. I pass it off to organizers because I have my own stuff to do. But that was something that I essentially started, and it is a nationwide infrastructure to support rent strikes, essentially, and to educate people, to connect them with mutual aid organizations, to bring a spotlight on things, and basically just let people know like what's going on, and use that massive email list to organize. And this is very similar to what happened in France with the Yellow Vest movement. A lot of people don't know this, but the Yellow Vest movement began with a very successful petition campaign that got 1 million signatures over the course of a few weeks. And they used those signatures not just to pressure politicians. When the politicians didn't listen, they used the contact info they get from those signatures to organize, which is the most important part of that, right? And that's what Rent Strike 2020 does. And if you want more info, you can look it up.
A strike has always fundamentally been our greatest strength. There's no material way to compensate for our, like, at the end of the day, we're all holding up the floor they stand on. If we or to appropriate some language, if Atlas shrugs, there's nothing they can do to prevent that from happening. I do wish that we implemented strikes more. I do hate the fact that boycotting is seen by some to be an effective replacement of strikes, as if the Lib variant, instead of actually hitting them where it hurts, just buy like a different brand of cereal. With regard to the the efficacy of striking, do you agree that? Because this is what I've heard, and I agree with this, I think. Do you agree that the moment we start to see boots hitting the ground again, once the economy is reopened with COVID-19, that this would be like our time to that's like the pivotal moment. Like, fuck you, no, we're not going back to work. Find a way to maintain basic services without killing, thousands of people through exposure to this virus. I feel like that's a key weak point historically that we could exploit.
I think that so I'm going to give my best guess of how this could play out. I think our only chance to try and organize a national general strike is before everyone goes back to work and everything goes back to
everyone
normal.
goes back to work. Okay.
Yes, because the second everything is back to normal, there will be a smaller segment of the population that even feels like they are part of the people getting screwed over. And it'll essentially just be the people who are going into debt. And the media obviously is not going to support them at all. And there's not going to be the public sympathy that you would see right now. I feel like right now is the time for people to start doing strikes. We are expecting to see some starting on May 1st. And also we are expecting to see a larger nationwide rent strike movement on May 1st. So I think this is our chance. I mean, we saw with like the '08 crash, like there was a movement being built as a result of it. But when the economy started quote, in its upswing or whatever the fuck, people kind of just, went back to their business and tuned the fuck out again. And that's like what I kind of expect to see it with the American people. The people who get screwed over are just people who get screwed over, and a lot of people won't really have solidarity with them unless we organize right now, and we do it while everyone feels like we're in this boat together. Because right now, if you're a renter, you're in the same boat as every other renter who can't pay the rent right now, and you have the same worries. If you're a worker, whether you're laid off or you're working and you're not getting hazard pay, you both feel like you are getting screwed over. And I think that's something that is fleeting. It might be like that entire sentiment might be gone the second everyone goes back to work and everyone starts talking about how great everyone's doing. And then the people who are actually kind of doing okay and actually do survive it, can we expect them to have solidarity with the people who aren't? I wouldn't take that for granted. which is why I think we need to do this stuff right now when
Yeah, we have a very
everyone feels like we are in
atomized
the same boat.
society with that respect. It's difficult,
Yeah.
I think, for a lot of people to sympathize. A lot of that, moral responsibility for success is placed on people's shoulders individually. I do like how many people have been shit talking landlords in social media, though. The extent to which we've normalized, like the idea of a landlord, is fucking disgusting. Like when you actually sit down and
Yeah.
think about it, especially since you have all these landlords now who are complaining that if there's a rent strike, they won't be able to pay the mortgage payments, which means that if you pay rent to a landlord and you have to stop because the economy's shut down, and that means they can't pay their mortgage, that means you aren't the one relying on them for housing. They're the one relying on you for housing. You are the one providing every ounce of labor and wealth into that process. We don't do this for anything else. There's nothing else that we
Yeah.
do this for. There's no other indefinite lease for people who don't even make the house but just got there first. Nobody does this, but we've normalized it. It's just something we've gotten used to.
Yeah.
So the increasing level of antipathy that I'm seeing there is heartening, and that's the thing I think that we should be positive about. Positive about, I hate to say it, but COVID-19. If we want to look at a silver lining here, positive about you, positive about Bernie Sanders. Even though Bernie Sanders has lost, for all intents and purposes, I think we can all agree Bernie Sanders' greatest strength was never his electoral viability, but rather him showing America there was another way. He's moved so many people over to the left just by showing them it's possible to believe in these things. And likewise, the antipathy that's being brought about from the economic crisis resulting from COVID-19 is, I think, waking a lot of people up to the fundamental structural problems that are in our system. And I hope, I pray that when it ends, we don't all just go back to forgetting how broken our system is. Like we get back in the economy has a surge again, of course, because everything's running again, and we all just forget that for a brief period of time, we sincerely did not have a way of organizing the economy so people wouldn't starve to death while we shut down, businesses. I really hope we don't go back to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, we can either come out of this stronger or we can come out of this weaker. And I think I think it's a very binary option. And that depends on, what we do as the left. I mean, there's a very small percentage of the country that is even politically educated. And when I say educated, I don't mean people who read Marx. I mean people who even I don't know, I guess people who understand the basic dynamic of what we're dealing with landlords, with our
Right.
workplaces, and what the path forward is. And I think it's very important that we raise the level of consciousness of the average person, rather than trying to I guess work within the current paradigm. Right now, the vast majority of people still don't know what a rent strike is. The
Right.
vast majority of people don't know what a general strike is. They don't really know much about unions. They don't know, they don't even know what socialism is for the majority. We are making progress on that, but I think it's very important that we actually are reaching people with popular message and actually getting them to understand, no, I'm not some crazy authoritarian who's going to take over the government with some army, and then now everyone has to go to the gulags. It's like this very
See,
wild
you say
picture
that
everyone's
now,
got
but
painted.
what if you're only being sarcastic? Maybe that is in fact exactly what you want to do. Um,
I mean, what
the average person is
Castro did,
completely
where he
the average person is completely politically illiterate. Trying to get across any message to the people other than more jobs and less immigrants is fucking exhausting. I can't imagine how many hours Bernie's campaign team sat behind closed doors, strategizing how do we say it would be better if we weren't all poor? How do they're thinking how do we deliver this message? How do we tell people good things are good and bad things are bad? And you need fucking Einstein, PhD workers trying to develop the bulletproof message that will resonate with the average, I'm very sorry to your constituency, dumb fuck American, because we've been deliberately insulated from any kind of political understanding, because the more ignorant we are, the easier it is for them to force shit down our throats. Except for all your voters, all your followers,
actually,
very knowledgeable, very intelligent.
so I actually don't think it should be people with PhDs, and I don't think it should be people who are super like theory educated
Oh, I was being
folks who are
facetious
trying
there.
to do this. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
I think actually that's my appeal. I'm a truck driver. I'm high school educated. I've never really read Marx. I don't
Uh-oh.
like read political theory. And what I do is I make my own analysis, and I try to frame things in a way that I would understand it, in a way that I would relate to. And so far, that has worked. I'm an open socialist that is radically anti-capitalist, running on probably the most aggressive and most progressive agenda or policy platform in the history of the country, right? Um, and yet, I still, when I talk to a voter at the doors, um, whether like almost no matter who they are, I have a really good chance of convincing them because I am used to talking to regular folks. I'm not spending all my time talking to people who are like diving into Marx theory and then like spend all their time like in Jacobin reading groups. I spend my time talking to regular people. I spent the last 5 years as a truck driver. Before that, I was a factory worker. Before that, I was a service worker, and I actually think my lack of a college education and like my worldview and my experiences actually make it easier for me to convey my ideas
No,
to a regular
I
person.
completely agree,
And
and
I
I
think
think
that's the
that's
important thing.
I think that's a beautiful thing because for decades leftism has been gatekept behind academia, which is of course useless. Academia, at least insofar as changing the world, is on its own completely useless. What philosophers and big brain, writers are doing behind closed doors is of absolutely no relevance to the well-being of the average person. The fact that now we're getting the dissemination of these basic ideas, not, a complex treatise on the falling rate of profit, but a general understanding that, hey, maybe we're kind of getting fucked over here, and the system of employment that we have come to normalize kind of is a form of exploitation, maybe, possibly, maybe.
Yeah.
I think being able to frame these ideas in more colloquial language and for colloquial ends is infinitely more important than just, getting another fancy pants socialist book out there. And I'm just happy that's happening because none of this happened before 2016. The average American,
Yeah.
prior to 2016, if you asked them what they thought socialism was, they would just run Stalin, Adolf Hitler,
Yeah.
Cuba, like that's it. That's where it stops. And now there's a little bit more nuance. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case, and I think we are actually like doing pretty well on the ground. We have the poorest areas of my district are actually where I have the most like proportionately the most support, and I think that's like really telling. I had an experience where I was knocking doors for Bernie Sanders, and I was like, clearly the apartment complex I was like knocking was like a full-on slum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I told the story. I told a story on social media about like what happened while I was there. The property management came up to me and handed me the phone saying the landlord wanted to talk to me. The landlord started shouting at me about Venezuela and all this other shit, like just unhinged rant, right? It was wild.
It's
And
a
then
standard debate opponent. You know how it is.
yeah, and she was telling me about how, Bernie Sanders. I was canvassing for Bernie actually at the time, but she was telling me how Bernie is going to take half of her hard-earned income, and I flat out said to this lady, like, "Ma'am, you're a landlord. You don't have any hard-earned income," and like, okay, she was just furious, screaming at me, and I handed back the phone, and like laughed, and I told them, "Well, I'm going to keep on canvassing the rest of these doors. I'm not soliciting. I have a legal right to continue doing this, right?" And I canvassed the whole apartment complex. And I told this story online. It turned out like she is a notorious like Republican figure that is also a slumlord and controls the apartments of several of my actual campaign volunteers.
Oh,
And one of my top volunteers actually has organized a rent strike in one of those slums, and like they have effectively kind of taken some power in that situation, and they've been organizing, with the tenants union and all that stuff. And this is like, I don't know, it's such a wild paradigm that I'm actually reaching the poorest people who need the help the most, the people who are, and they're also radicalized. Like the second, like they're already radicalized, and this is this has kind of been my like experience. People are radical right now. They just need an ideological framing for those radical feelings.
That's a good
Because
point.
right now there's a
The
yeah.
radicalism is
I was
already present. You just where do you
exactly.
throw it?
I was in line at Wells Fargo going to pay my rent. Right. My landlord has me like deposit money into his account. And so I'm standing in line, and we had a really long line because of COVID-19. And the folks around me started chatting. I'm kind of just on my phone, and I hear them talking about literally like, we have so many billionaires in this state. Why aren't they paying any taxes? Like why does Jeff Bezos need 140 billion? And like they're clearly like blue collar workers. Like they literally have like their work uniforms on and stuff. And so I started like butting in, talking about how much money Jeff Bezos has, and like how little he actually pays, and like how fucked up I think it is that like our wealth is so concentrated in the hands of a few. And these people are like, yeah, I hate rich people. Like, why the fuck does this guy need 140 billion dollars? Like what an actual piece of garbage. And then towards the end, I'm talking about like, well, that's why we should support Bernie Sanders. Our primary was already over, but they were like, oh no, like I voted for Trump. And you've got these people who hate the rich, fucking hate Jeff Bezos.
You say, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe try voting for Bernie Sanders. They turn to you and they say, what, that Jew? Oh God, we have to get them before the right does. It's very easy. You can direct anger like in any direction. If you put in just a little bit of effort. I feel like we need to be on the ground, engaging in some hardline recruitment.
Yeah, and that's why I use such radical framing. I literally I say stuff like the rich control everything, and when I say that, I mean the rich and large corporations. I specifically address our capitalist system, like this greedy like capitalist system, and I make it clear that it's corporations and the very wealthy that it's
Oh wait, Joshua. Just 1 second. Something happened to your microphone. It did a little crackle.
Okay.
And you're quieter. Do you mind bopping it?
Let's see. Can you hear me? Hello?
Well, I can hear you. It's just a little quieter and tinnier than it was before. I think it got bopped. Maybe like smack it or something. I don't know. I'm not a tech.
Is it better?
Oh, a little farther out than that, but we'll work with it.
Okay. So yeah,
All right, there we go.
I use the framing specifically as that the working class and capitalist class, because I make it clear that like there are landlords and there are renters, and then there are homeowners, and then there are the mortgage companies, and then there are like workers, and then there are executives and shareholders. Like I specifically use this framing because I want people to understand that like you have a lot, like as a regular worker in America, you have a lot more in common with like a farm laborer from Guatemala than you ever will with Jeff Bezos.
Goddamn right.
And I want that stuff to be clear. I want people to understand like you are a worker first. Like if you are supporting this capitalist system, you're supporting your boss. Like your boss doesn't support you. None of it's going to be reciprocated. And I want to radicalize discourse. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So.
And I thank you for it. I really, really appreciate you coming on to speak with me. I must hold true to the hour-long format. Could you kindly refer everyone watching and listening to every social that you would like to plug?
Yeah, so I am on every platform at Joshua for Congress. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Joshua, the number 4 Congress. My website is joshua2020.com. You can donate there. You can also see my full policy platform, over 230 policies. And you can also join our Discord server. I think we're at like 1,800 people on our server. So if you're interested in volunteering, that's the place you would do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work you've done and how inspiring it is to see people of my political and I guess temporal disposition getting involved in politics. A few last things before you go. First of all, again, of course, thank you. Second of all, my girlfriend, please tell him I love his nail polish. That's from her mouth to your ears. I agree.
It's all screwed up right now, but yeah.
It is screwed up, but it's a nice color. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Best of luck in the upcoming
thanks for doing what you
primary.
do.
Yeah, may you have many,
All right.
many donos and many supportive voters. And I look forward to seeing how the rent strike turns out. I will try to participate in it to the best possible extent.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate you.
You will.
Talk to you later. Bye.
If you guys want him to say trans rights, all you have to do is go to his Twitter. I'm pretty sure you're going to find it real quick.